There wasn't that opening that we thought there was going to be for many, many years. I lived in Chile under dictatorship for many years. And by the time, everything that was a subject of importance in environmental activism in the States was unheard of in Chile still. They felt like they had infinite resources. So they could, cows were being grown in the open fields, supposedly. They had enough forest for everybody. So it was all just about extraction and inside dictatorship. So there was just not much you could say about anything that was going on. You could just see what was happening. And then there happened to be after the plebiscito, there was this little lull in time where, dictatorship was over. People have to stop shouting each other from each side of the street, and they have to come together on something, or they would like to. It was an open space. And at that time, there just happened to be some of the last rushes to go for Chile resources, like the oldest, best redwood, which is the alerce, the tallest, oldest, straightest pine, which is the araucaria, and they had been protected before. So you could kind of feel like that last minute grab coming. And that made us react without fear, because we were in those months in between the plebiscito and the actual taking over the government. And there was a lot of underground activism because you couldn't really do much. And the araucaria was protected before, so it wasn't such a strange thing. It's a strange thing in the whole world that the araucarias and alerces are protected. There's very few protected trees in the world, that are prohibited. And so reinstating that was a possibility, because it like many things that got dissolved in dictatorship. So we did this protest with a huge araucaria tree painted in a studio, and tried to put it on the CONAF wall and tried to raise attention to the Pehuenches, asking for their 2,000-year-old trees not to be destroyed, because it was about their lives. It was the Pehuenches' food for their animals, food for themselves. They made flour. It was just, and the beauty of the trees, there was all the reasons in the world why these trees should be protected, especially because it was the livelihood of people. So it was a good sort of first cause. So we wanted to do something visual and, get a piece. There was no internet. Get an interview in the newspaper, or, something in a Rita Domingo. Or those were all really hard things to accomplish, except in this hole, in this lull in between. All of a sudden there was a space, because nobody wanted to talk about politics anymore. Some of the issues, this wasn't such a dangerous issue like salud, la deuda, the social health debts were just so strong. This was something that could be talked about. Probably they found it lighter. And all of a sudden we were on the front page of La Época. And that being on the front page opened up a certain space to have an interview in the Rita Domingo, to start talking about it. It was something that people could talk about outside of this right and left, back and forth, horrible situation been going on for over 30 years. So it was a very special moment. I don't think that kind of opening has happened very many times after that. We had to act fast. Acting fast meant to really just take things off the market so that international companies couldn't come and exploit these things. At the same time, we were asking for protection. And the crazy thing that happened is that we got the protection for the araucaria while we were still trying to raise money to buy it away from the New Zealand logging company. And it became a symbol it was Chile's first private park, and it became a symbol of this positiveness to preserve. The World Park was about, also because it was, $3 a hectare to buy unbelievably rich, beautiful native forest. We had to get it off the market. So we went looking for green philanthropists, because they were just being appearing in places of the world as concerts. It wasn't very many. It was Doug Tompkins and Yvonne Chouinard and Benetton, and they were not easy to get to, except that Doug was somebody from San Francisco. So we were starting to look for funds, Alan Whedon in the East Coast and Conservation Internationals. Also, there was already, by that time, 15, 20 años, 15, 20 years of activism that was putting into money to try to change things. So all of a sudden we got support even from environmental groups and environmental philanthropists to say, I'm tired of funding these organizations. Let's just buy the forest instead of trying to change the laws, trying to protect trees. This is like, okay, this is something we can do. And this transition moment also, because as I said, there was a debt in education, a debt in health. We weren't going to get any governmental support for conservation. We had to look in the private sector. And that was just a novelty. It was a novelty that caught on like wildfire in different places of the world. We also didn't have any legality to do it any different. Like in the States, we couldn't do land trusts. So a lot of small groups of people started trying to conserve by buying, and ran into millions of problems between their families and so on and so forth because the legal structure wasn't there. My particular interest was the Cani because I was trying to create a park that was able to show that conservation is development. It's not versus development. And that was the biggest issue at that time. And we actually were able to change the value of forest for all the locality. It became an important issue. I mean, from just the woods that was supposed to be useless unless you could cut them down, get firewood and put cows on it, they became valuable not just economically but in people's minds. Buying more lands I knew wasn't the solution. But creating a model for conservation as development was important. We had to go do the groundwork for that. Douglas in the Pumalin project also had to do it. It was sort of a rush of activism in that in the world. People wanted to put their money in preserving a place in whatever form it was possible, private, mixed, groupal, conservation, give it away, keep it for yourself and protect it yourself. Everything became an eco-park, an eco-condominium, an eco-development, and good. It changed the mindset. I think just people accepting that they want nature close to their lives and is changed consumers' value from around the world. People come to Chile to buy beautiful houses on the lake because Chile has so much. Our small project was the Cani. The big project was trying to do what Douglas eventually did do. But we thought it would take us a really long time and we would have to get all Chilean supportive of it. We were going to do a campaign of participation, everybody putting $1 in for the forest, get international, national, private, public, a whole mix. But what we needed to do while this land grab was going on, while these prices were still low, while this value didn't exist, we needed to do it fast. So we actually went to Doug Tompkins to look to him to support the project by putting a down payment on 2 particular pieces of land, which is where the Pumalin project started. So he came and we did an expedition and looked at the place. He got really excited. He saw the prices of it and he set up his own map room in Santiago, pretty much peeled off the people that were working with us. We were all working like, volunteers basically, paid them salaries, and started looking at all these and started associating himself with people who help lawyers and business in Chile who would help him buy out. That's where he got in trouble in the first place because he didn't we had created a whole structure for this with scientists and diplomat, political people and environmentalists, sort of a real mix of a foundation. Because it's very important to be careful of who you put together. Chile had this xenophobia really strong in it, obviously for many reasons they did from the past, and having a gringo coming in. So all of this was already thought of, and he just came bashed through all this. He doesn't want any of this stuff that takes any time. He was going out and buying lands and, basically telling people that just get off. He wanted to preserve for the sake of preservation. And very quickly he learned that if he didn't create some kind of public project around it, he was going to be criticized. And then he was for 20 years. And then he took it on as a challenge. How to make a huge conservation project like this beneficial for Chile. He had to answer that question. He fought with lots of salmoneras. Luckily, the whole area of the Pumalin Park, there wasn't that many people involved. And in the end, nobody liked the way he did his things, but in the end, he was able to do in 20 years an amazing, he and his equipo. And you never know what would have happened if we had done it the way we thought we were going to do it. I think Chileans believe that now Tompkins Park is their park. It's a Chilean park. Conservation in Chilean mindset was not valuable. It was hurtful. If you wanted to conserve something, it meant you couldn't sell it. So it took a long time, maybe a generation. The fact that somebody, which took them a long time, would come from another place of the world and use all their money to put into this land that was not even accessible and not extract anything was just inconceivable. And because he was so much in the news and it was so discussed, and the people, you started realizing, okay, there's something to this guy. Okay, there's something to what he's doing. Remember, they do this because they have so much money that they need to spend. And what better than spending on preserving nature? Now, there's other people who spend it on education. Believed the intrinsic value of nature as a deep ecologist, and how important. I mean, he understood what many people are just becoming to understand right now. And he had the capacity to do something about it. I still ask, what's the value of beauty? It's something that we can't intellectualize very well. People are seeing it, but then we'll never really be able to put a value on beauty. We just know it has a value. It's like saying put a value on love. Put an economic value. No, we just know we are love. We need love, Beauty is the same thing. And Douglas, he had the resources to protect beauty, to create beauty. I mean, those campings and buildings. I mean, he loved design and made everything a tribute to beauty. In every place that he went or touched, in every garden, in every puente, in every house. And it has an impact that doesn't have words. And Chileans went there, wow, that's how pretty a park can be, Didn't have that experience before of beauty. So I think Douglas's respect for beauty and focus on beauty and nature was an eye-opener for people who knew that but didn't know how to express it. And choose threatened biodiversity and start conserving from a priority list. No, this was looked at through the eyes of a businessman. This is really cheap hectares of prime forest, in many ways inaccessible. He had his own biodiversity priorities that had a little bit to do with the situation also. Then he became interested in other areas of that were conservation priorities. Argentinian made him very conscious of conservation priorities. But what also remember, he's just started his conservation history in Chile. And he started by just buying what we showed him to buy, and then how much he could buy around that, and how he could connect all the pieces because we were all different landowners. It was a major project just to start buying. He could have done all that without his aesthetic values. Doug was particularly an aesthetic person. Remember, he had a clothes design company. He was very much a designer himself, so he had a different eye, and the resources to back it. I particularly love to see Casa de Campesino, a small farm worker's house that they've made beautiful by collecting old plastic tubs and putting flowers in them. And I mean, I love to see what people can do with little resources. It's very easy to do beautiful things with lots of resources, and his were endless. So it's also, a very privileged position to be able to just talk about beauty. That was, you have 70% of people in Chile living under not considered poverty, but close. Having lots of money to talk about beauty could be kind of offensive, or just another reality. How do we now live with conservation and development together, and with the challenges of today, of climate change, that really changes the whole picture, and how we're going to react to that.